Inviting me, and I'm here with my son. So happy to be in Berlin with this wonderful weather. Of course, the weather is changing dramatically. One can't predict it. But there is a change we desperately need. And it's a change at the level of our political and economic systems that are clearly not working. From Tunisia and Egypt to the squares of Spain and the streets of India right now, people are calling for change. They're calling for change because the current system, the business as usual, has given us a deep ecological crisis, the crisis of climate catastrophe. 12 people have died in the floods of Bengal right now. Now we're having floods. Last year, 2,000 people died in the floods of Pakistan. 200 people died in flooding in the desert of Ladakh. The food basket of the United States is suffering drought, a very, very severe kind. And that's what you have, intensification of droughts, of floods, of cyclones. The ecological crisis is also being reflected in terms of species extinction. That short film you saw shows the richness of the diversity of our seeds. We used to have 200,000 varieties of rice alone. Humanity has eaten 8,500 plants. And now we grow and trade in 6 primary commodities. Wheat and rice, which are the result of the Green Revolution, and now genetically engineered corn, genetically engineered soya, genetically engineered canola. And we are always told this is for solving the food crisis, but most of it isn't going for food in any case. In the United States, 30% corn is going for making oil for running cars, and 70% is going as force feeding for animals in animal prisons. Commodification of food has created a huge food crisis, and it's related very much to the disappearance of biodiversity in agriculture. We have a water crisis whose biggest burden is borne by women who walk longer and longer miles. And that's why, at least in my country, every ecological movement has been initiated by women whose walk for water was becoming unbearable. I became active in the 70s with the Chipko movement. Chipko was about protecting the forests so that the women would have water and fuel and fodder and wouldn't have to walk 10 miles a day. We had a movement against the shrimp industry. Again, the factory farming of shrimp was creating salinization of water. Women were walking 10 miles for water, and they said no more. Coca-Cola mining 1.5 million liters of groundwater every day in a tiny village in Kerala. And the women, led by Maila rose and said, we won't walk further. This company must close. And Coca-Cola's plant had to be shut down. The women said. The women of Chipko stopped logging. 1981, first victory. Actually, people think that 1972 in Stockholm was the big environmental gathering, but pre-Stockholm, the women of Chipko were already giving an ecological message to the world. And 1981, we had a logging ban on all cutting of forests in high altitudes of the Himalaya because it destabilizes the ecosystem. But it isn't just the ecological crisis. We don't have to talk anymore about the fact that there's an economic crisis. 2007, 2008, speculation on housing brought down Wall Street. And the world hasn't recovered since then. Europe is having to pay a price for gambling done in New York. Entire countries have gone under. Greece and Spain and Iceland and Ireland. And this pressure then translates into everyday living. It was recognized very early that many of the movements in the Arab world were not just about getting rid of dictators like Mubarak, but they were also about the price of bread. People were waving bread while they were on the streets in Tahrir Square. And the economic crisis is showing us very clearly that some assumptions made by some men sitting very far away from reality cannot be the basis of running our world, please. Cannot be the basis of an economy. Economy, like ecology, is derived from oikos, which means the home. Now, looking after the home needs very different skills from gambling. And in fact, it's women who've had those good skills, but their work didn't count. Their knowledge didn't count. And growth was calculated on the basis of not just ignoring nature's work, women's work, but actually destroying it and undermining it. So for every river polluted, you had growth. For every species pushed to extinction, you had growth. We have a huge campaign in India around a very toxic pesticide called endosulfan. It has killed 1,000 people, crippled 9,000 people, but selling endosulfan creates growth. And you know, because I've dedicated my life to saving seeds, and you saw a little glimpse of it in that film. But you know, if a seed is saved by a farmer on their own farm, it's open pollinated, which means it's open source seed. The bees can pollinate it, it can be saved year in and year out, it can be exchanged freely. There's growth of life. There's growth of diversity. There's growth of food security. There's growth of livelihoods. There's growth of culture. But there isn't financial growth. The minute a Monsanto can genetically engineer and patent that seed, you have miraculous scales of growth. From India alone, from genetically engineered BT cotton, Monsanto is extracting more than 10 billion rupees worth of royalties annually. Doing no work. All they have is a patent, and they take royalties from the companies whom they lock into licensing arrangements, and they compel them to only sell the genetically engineered BT cotton. This Times Economist has ads about how they brought prosperity to India and how they made Indian cotton farmers rich. But if you were to go to the cotton areas of India, what you find is something we've never seen in India before, an epidemic of farmer suicides. If you make a map of farmer suicides and you make a map of the BT cotton areas, it's the same map. 250,000 farm suicides in the decade and a half since Monsanto entered the seed sector. And in this short period, it has destroyed our diversity. We had 1,500 varieties of cotton. And now all you have is BT cotton. 95% of the cotton seed is now in one company's hand, in a little over a decade. If you look globally, 95% of all genetically engineered seeds sold is in Monsanto's hands. You saw at the end of the film, women at the farm are collecting grass. It'll go as fodder to feed animals. Very often in these greens that are called weeds is tremendously nutritious food. We've done surveys that on good ecological farms you can find 250 edible wild plants that women use, which are rich in iron, rich in vitamin A. You would never see that in a genetically engineered field that has been sprayed with Roundup.